Welcome back to Season 2 of ChatTpt. Dive into the pulse of the music industry with us through insightful conversations and insider tips. Join us as we connect with seasoned pros and explore the keys to a versatile career. Tune in every other week for inspiration and motivation to thrive in music's dynamic world.
Welcome to ChatTpt with Kayla Solomon and Marcus Grant and special guest, Dr. Brianne Borden. And we were just talking about how we're going to make ChatGPT specific cards because in our last episode we were using both Monopoly Deal and Uno cards to help us sort of streamline the conversation. So we've got this plan, and Brianne was amazing, and she said all great ideas start with. So I was on Canva, right? It was something like that, right?
Yeah, something like that.
So Marcus and I are huge fans of Brianne Borden because she's just such a wonderful human and has contributed so much to the trumpet and music community. And we're really excited to talk with her about wellness and especially her new book that came up, not new, I guess. It's been a while since it came out, but I feel like it's fairly new. But her mindful trumpet playing book, which I think is super duper important. And it goes with the theme of ChatGPT. I feel like we're starting to really close in on like what we're all about, like the hokey pokey. Anyways,
we're all about Brianne. That's what it is.
So I'm just going to say I apologize. My internet seems to be like unhappy with me, but we're just going to roll with it and hopefully it's okay. But tell me if I need to change anything.
That's
thanks
okay.
for having me. The being a fan is very mutual. I love y'all. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay.
We're so excited to have you here. And the good news is our recording is going to be higher quality than our podcast as nature of Riverside. And I don't want to make this sound like a Riverside ad. Maybe one day they will sponsor us, but
that would be so nice.
We've really enjoyed working, using Riverside for our podcast because they record everything locally. So if your internet betrays you, then whatever is recorded from your computer is what will end up being placed on the episode. So we're good. It's all good. We can relax.
Well, if I just keep
Hopefully.
talking, even though everyone's frozen, I'll just keep talking and it'll be there.
Oh. Can you still hear us at least?
Yeah, no, we're good. We're good.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Yay. So I'm going to kick things off because I don't want Marcus to use his Uno reverse card on me. The only reason I'm kicking things off. And because I love Brianne. So Brianne, I was hoping that you could tell us a little bit about who you are. You can just give us like a whole like summary. It can be like 4 hours of who is Brianne Borden? How did you start off playing trumpet? Just kidding. Tell us about your work in health and wellness. What got you interested in doing this? And what you are continuing to do to promote this in the music community. Let's start there. So I want to hear like your beginnings of like, where did all this come from?
Yeah, absolutely. Where did it all come from? That's a great question.
The brain!
Inside the depths of my brain, which is a scary place, but sometimes produces some great things. So my freshman year of college, I went to college at the Crane School of Music at SUNY Potsdam, which is where I currently teach. And I was one of those like, band nerd high schoolers in youth orchestra in Allstate, like all of that kind of stuff. So I was like playing a decent amount, but then I went to college and I was playing like a ton. I have never lacked in enthusiasm, and so I like jumped in head first into wind ensemble, jazz band, brass quintet, brass ensemble, like literally everything that they would let me be in. I was like, I'm in. And my body was like, girlfriend, you have never done this before, and we don't particularly like work out. So I immediately injured my shoulders. I got tendonitis in my shoulders, and then I also got lateral epicondylitis, which is tennis elbow. And my body just like was not used to holding up the trumpet for that amount of time. And the trumpet isn't a particularly heavy instrument, as we know, but it's still like being in that position for a long period of time really takes a toll on the body. So I had to go to physical therapy as a freshman in college, which was super fun. And my physical therapist started recommending that I go to yoga classes. And those of you unfamiliar with the town of Potsdam, it's a very small town. We do now have like some yoga studios here, but back in 2009, that did not exist. And there was one yoga teacher in town teaching in like uh, an an old college building that was no longer a college building. And I was really fortunate to have like one of my mentors and professors. She was my trumpet professor's, is my trumpet professor's partner. Um, and her and I, she would go to yoga and she would always bring me. So her and I started going to yoga really regularly, and it blew my mind. I had gone as a high schooler, middle schooler, because my mom is a practicing yoga practitioner. I love how I've been doing that for like 20 years and I don't know what to call it still. It's like,
It's like, is it trumpeter, trumpetist, trumpet
exactly.
player, like
Yeah.
whatever you're feeling at the time?
Yeah. A yoga person. It's a yoga person. So my mom had taken me to a lot of yoga, but never did I really like see it it was great because it was like time with my mom, and my mom's pretty cool, but it was not like I need to do this to make my trumpet playing better. And that was what I was really interested in my freshman year of college. And I started seeing all of these changes physically and then also mentally, which I didn't anticipate. I was kind of a performance anxiety poster child throughout high school and my freshman year. I would get nature's vibrato, where I'd get really shaky when I would be performing. I'd get dry mouth, clammy hands. Like, I thought every performance I ever did was like the worst thing in the world. And I didn't know what to do about it. I just kind of was like, well, that's my life. And so I started seeing all these differences, and then I became like the girl that was trying to convince all of her friends to go to yoga with her, like all the freaking time. Um, and I knew that when I went to do my master's, that I wanted to also get my yoga teaching certification. And like I had the idea at that very point in time, I said, I want musicians to be taught yoga. Like I want this needs to happen. There's something here that is super important, and I want to make sure that that happens. So I went to get my master's at the University of Colorado Boulder, and conveniently was in a city that there's a ton of yoga. So got my certification there, and then continued on the path for my doctorate. Again, it was like pretty obvious what my doctoral dissertation was going to be about. And I knew that from like the moment I started auditioning for my DMA, and ended up going to ASU for that. And Dave Hickman was a real big supporter of that for me, which I'm really grateful for. And um, yeah, that's kind of where that happened, and it all kind of began outside of the walls of like my own personal studying and learning. Um, when I was in my doctorate doing presentations at ITG on yoga for trumpet players and stuff like that. And 2020, I opened Yoga for All Musicians, and we're a virtual yoga studio, and we have about 10 teachers, and we really thought it was going to be this like little tiny, um, just give the musicians yoga during the pandemic thing. And then hours on FaceTime later, we like have a name and an LLC, and we're like, I guess we're doing this thing. So we're super stoked to be open 4 years later still. But yeah, that's the very short version of the many wellness things that I have stuck my hands into.
That's so awesome. Can't wait to record the extended version in a few days. So, um, just kidding. We haven't set that up. I'm just here to tell jokes and be silly and
Our
goofy.
our one. I'm gonna have 100 days of podcast, and it's just gonna be Brianne. I'd be
My
fine with that.
entire life story. Buckle up.
That would be so great. I honestly, like, genuinely would be happy with that. I think it's so great that you've not just allowed your involvement with um, yoga and mindfulness and so on and so forth to benefit your career, but you've taken it into a field and in a context where it can help literally anyone who just exist around your person. I think it's a really great and amazing thing. It shows the compassion that you have for others and the passion you have for teaching, which is really cool because a lot of these things we can keep to ourselves. There is this huge, like, gigantic, wide gaping hole in our field. Well, there's a lot as musicians, and we're gonna have lots of people on our episodes. Hopefully filling in those holes so that we have wholesome musicians preparing for the future. But performance anxiety is very common, right? And muscular tension, psychological tension, and so on and so forth is especially common in trumpet players. And the amount of our progress that comes from the mind is just it's such a strong and powerful thing. And yoga is like, it's almost like a life hack to great trumpet playing. It's really funny. I mean, I think it's a life hack to a lot of things, but I just love that you have given us an opportunity and a resource to delve into that type of thing. Yeah, I just wanted to express that appreciation.
Thank
And I'm
you.
wondering a little bit. Yeah, I mean, we talk about. There's a lot of people who yoga is a term we don't often like define, and most
Mhm.
people don't really truly understand it. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, what exactly is yoga, and then what are the main benefits. We touch on it a little bit, but if you could, directly say, so our listeners can go, oh shoot, I need to do this, and this is why. Just like me, I need to do this. Like I said,
Yeah.
we're recording it. I need to spend more time with you in general, Brianne, for reasons like that.
It's kind of like, what is trumpet? Like there's a ton of different types of trumpets. The history of trumpet is really long. Like uh, it's similar with yoga. And I've studied yoga to the extent where I actually, during my doctorate, I worked full time as a manager for a yoga studio and was our programming director. So I've led, I believe, 9 yoga teacher trainings. And so, like, I have done a really, really, really deep dive into the philosophy of yoga. Um, and so I just like think that it's important to share that yoga is a whole lot more than what I generally share when I do like a 60-minute clinic at a conference, because it's impossible to fit everything into 60 minutes and I like to talk. So I pick and choose. And the things that I pick and choose are okay, I'll let me see if I can like Cliff Notes version of this. I can do this. Okay, so yoga um, is based off of this text called the Yoga Sutras, which are like hundreds, I think 170 sutras that were written by somebody named Patanjali. There's a lot of debate if that's one person or a whole bunch of people. Okay, all of that to say, in those sutras, there is a concept called the 8 limbs of yoga. And of those 8 limbs of yoga, which is so I'll say that the Western world, what we've taken from these sutras are the 8 limbs of yoga. That's kind of how we define yoga. And even there, a lot of people only use some of the limbs. So those limbs that I use often in talking about how it can benefit musicians are physical posture, so asana, meditation, and breath. So those are like the 3 things that I take. There's 5 more limbs. I actually really like the first 2 limbs are kind of about how you exist in the world. So non-harming, non-stealing, non-attachment, those types of things. And I teach those to my musicians wellness class that I teach because I think those can really help just get like it. I wanted, when I was in college, if I could have just had a book that was like, this is how you be a person, I would have probably had a much more well-rounded college life. I don't know. Like they're all just trying to figure out how to be people and like how to interact with themselves and how to interact with other people. So that's the cool thing about those first two limbs, is that they are kind of that. They're like, practice truth, satya, like practice kindness, practice compassion, practice contentment. Those things are super important. But when I do clinics, I'll talk about meditation, breath work, and posture. Working through posture things, I use it to help prevent and treat um, injuries, overuse injuries in particular, because those are what we get as musicians. We are highly, highly, highly injured people. I also then use breath work and meditation to deal with performance anxiety things and calm the mind. There's all sorts of science that backs up. It's really cool to have studied yoga so deeply, and then to have done my doctorate through the same lens, because I've got to see all of this Western science um, back up all of the Eastern philosophy that they didn't study in the same way, but still studied very deeply, and how much they really, really, really line up. Breathing through your nose is good for your nervous system. Like those kinds of things that will really change somebody's like present experience. I have no idea if I answered the question, but I hope that I did.
No, you definitely did. And this is such a fascinating thing. It's funny. There's a lot in life that we, as human beings, we tend to be not so thorough with learning about truths and realities in life and so on and so forth. And there's so many bits of evidence of that out there, right? Like our entire school system is based on like 3 out of 8 forms of intelligence that we know confirmed that exist. It's one of many, many examples. Not to knock the school system. It's not the school system. It's everything in life. It's us as human beings. But there are things, I mean, there are elements to pedagogy, playing the trumpet, that we just completely ignore, that are extremely important aspects of, it only takes like you meet a doctoral student in their mid-20s and they're like, yeah, I haven't sight read in 12 years. You're like, what are you talking about? So just being able to understand, where it comes from and what the basis is, I think is really, really great. But what you've mentioned about meditation, breath, and posture, I mean, holy cow! Like, if we didn't know anything about those 3 things at all, and it was just like, just close your eyes and take deep breaths, and like sit up straight and tall, and then play your instrument, like that by itself has such incredibly huge benefits. I know from experience, because it's part of what I put in my practice. I've gotten to the point as a human being, you talked about like you wish you knew how to just be a human. Me too. Going through college, it was an interesting process, but just allowing myself to be in the headspace that was necessary to actually improve was something that just massively contributed to my success, and I know it contributes to other people's success. I wish, and I know Kayla probably agrees, I wish we had a Dr. Brianne Borden when we were students, because there are a lot of things that, the things in the mindful trumpet playing, right, book. To be perfectly honest with you, it only takes like the first, I don't know, 6 pages to completely transform how you approach, both mentally and physically, before you even get to any of the playing exercises, right? Because a lot of students and professionals, it's just not something we talk about very often.
So I've had this weight in my brain for the last, I don't know, however many minutes that Brianne was talking, because she said that there are 8 limbs to yoga, and I was just thinking Yogoctopus. So that's what I wanted to share.
Yogoctopus, oh my gosh.
That's very important.
That's just been sitting in my brain, and I'm just like, it's been spinning, and I just needed to get it out there. So thank you for that.
We need to somehow incorporate that. I don't know how. I don't know how, but we need to somehow incorporate that into future podcast episodes. Yogoctopus?
Yogoctopus.
I
was trying to think of ways
I think there's a tattoo in there somewhere. Like,
Ooh.
Matching
I
tattoos.
love it.
Oh my
We'll
goodness.
include it as one of our merchandise logos too. Yeah, we
That's
have the
perfect.
Perfect.
potato, and then we'll have a Yogoctopus.
I love
I
it.
love it. Oh my goodness. So we've talked about in previous episodes just how much, like, how important it is to be present and to be gentle with yourself as you're playing, because trumpet is just like it's very stressful, and we make it even more stressful with the way that we approach it. And I deal with this with students as well, and I'm sure both of you do too. But one thing I wanted to talk with Brianne specifically about is like, how can you get yourself into that sort of like mindset where you're still being productive and efficient in your playing, but also like being gentle with yourself? Because I know for me, like, I'll be doing something that's kind of out of my comfort zone, and my whole body will start to tense up. But then because I'm tense, I'll start to play worse. And then because I'm playing worse, I'm like, oh my God, Kayla, why can't you get this? Like this and that. So like it starts this whole cycle. So, and I'm sure, I mean, I know it's the same for a lot of my students, because I tell them when they're going through that, I'm like, stop, put the trumpet down, shake it out. Like it's just a piece of metal. It doesn't matter. It's not that deep. But what is something that, everybody could do to help approach this with, just from a better mental standpoint?
Yeah, and it's like the answer to me is very straightforward, but it's much easier said than done. And it's that we need to learn to not associate our self-worth with how we perform on the instrument. And that's a really hard thing to do when we've had this. I mean, it's the longest relationship I've ever had, right? Like it's the thing that's been there. It's been the biggest constant in my life has been my trumpet. And uh that's also where I've received my most amount of accolades and my most amount of uh denials, or so it's really really easy to consider this thing a part of us, but like you said, at the end of the day it is metal plumbing, right? And I have done personally like a lot of therapy to recognize that, like, if I were to choose, I'm not going to and I don't want to, but if I were to choose to put my trumpet down tomorrow and say, I need a different path in life because it's no longer feeding me in the way that I need it to, emotionally, physically, what, not, it won't physically feed me. French fries from my trumpet. No,
Maybe someday we'll see.
we're working on it. Yeah.
We were starting to get four valves, so
So it's, if I were to do that, if I were to set it down, I know I would be okay. I know that, it would be hard. It's not going to be like, oh, everything's fine. It would be hard because it's been such a part of my life, but I know that I offer so much more to the world than going into metal tubing. And so that's a really hard concept for people to grasp. And that's why, like, in my teaching, my number one thing is how is my student doing first and foremost? Because the moment that I gloss over if they are like unwell, and I'm like, oh, you seem not so great. Let's hear F sharp melodic minor. And they're going to be like, okay, I guess what I'm going through doesn't matter, and the only thing that matters is if I can play this scale right now. And that's the kind of stuff that makes students like scared to go to lessons, because they feel like they're not going to be seen as a human and only seen as a trumpet playing machine. And so I think as teachers, we can do better jobs of reminding our students that they are humans and treating them as such. And I know I'm preaching to the choir right now, like this is, but um, then as players, finding those things that like bring us joy outside of the instrument that have nothing to do, like creating boundaries surrounding um, how much time you spend grinding. Like we very much have like a grinding and hustle culture. And then making sure that you have something outside of that that just like brings you joy, whether it's your dog or going on a run or like just something that you're like, even if that all goes to shit, I still have this as a happy place. And I think that kind of like real internal work will help when a student and when somebody is sitting there and really frustrated because they're not playing the way that they want to and they are feeling like they're not being as productive as they want to. um, they can dig a little deeper and like figure out why, and then maybe that frustration doesn't come as quickly, and then they end up being more productive because they're not wasting their energy on being frustrated. I also like will say, my tangent will end soon, but I will say that I would love if we like redefined the word productive, because it's like who what even is that? Like what is that? The one of the things that I love about the trumpet is like I'm never going to be the best in the world. Like I have let go of that dream the second I put the horn in my face. Like I and that I think is so cool because I will always have something to improve on. They will always have things to work on and get better at. Like there is no, if you can't tell by the degrees in starting a business, and also I'm a Capricorn. Um, I like to achieve, and I'm very competitive, and I like
What do you
to
mean Capricorns don't like to achieve?
yeah, Capricorns are super
Says the
chill.
Capricorn.
Yeah, we're super chill. We never take on extra tasks. Everything is totally fine all the time. We don't need to be the best at anything. Um, but so like trumpet is cool to me because it's like there's no end. There's no top. I can just keep freaking going. And how cool is that? And so when I start getting upset with myself about being productive, I'm like, what does that even mean? What is that? Like who's to say if this was productive? I do think that like there's efficiency. I'm a big fan of the efficiency in the practice room and behind practicing. Um, but I think if we can like reframe being productive to being efficient, we'll be kinder to ourselves. And I also feel like that is a little bit less like being fueled by capitalism. Not to go on. I said my tangent was ending, so that
No, I love that. I feel like this is super helpful because, like, I come from a very toxic relationship with my trumpet. It's complicated, you know. My Facebook relationship status is it's complicated with my trumpet,
Mhm.
and I developed the mentality that if I am not doing something every single waking moment to better myself as a trumpet player, then I'm not doing enough, and I'm not,
Right.
worthy of whatever. And that's like that's very not healthy at all. So I'm breaking free of that.
Well, and
And
we've been fed this line of like, if you're not practicing, someone else is. And I'm like,
right.
okay, but is that someone else good at practicing? Or are they just in the practice room? Like, yes, someone else might be practicing. Are they getting better? I don't know. Is my taking care of myself, taking 30 minutes to go on a walk, that's going to make me a better musician because then I'm going to go back to the trumpet and feel happier. And yeah, that's, I very much appreciate you sharing that.
That's such a good point though, because like in times when I am going through things like outside of the trumpet, even like maybe something's happening with my relationship, maybe like there's some family issues going on, like someone's sick or like I lost somebody, and then coming to the trumpet, that affects my trumpet playing because like I'm so connected to it. So if I don't
Mhm.
take care of myself emotionally, then like away from the trumpet, then coming back to the trumpet, it's going to feel really difficult. It's going to feel like a grind. And you don't want it to feel like that. Like, you want to be efficient and you want to be able to, make pretty sounds. That's what you want to do. That's the goal, is make pretty sounds. So taking care of yourself away from the trumpet is ultimately going to make yourself a better trumpet player.
Yes.
So it's just so hard to balance it, because like you said, like it's so much a part of us because it's been part of our lives for so long. Oh my goodness. Anyway, sorry. My Marcus said this is going to be a vulnerable episode, and here I am. I'm not going to cry. Not going to cry. I won't cry. I promise.
I mean, if you did, it would be okay, because
See, I
crying
loved
is a human, yeah, it's a human expression, right? And it's a really healthy thing. And I really love what you mentioned, Brianne. There's such a huge focus on, people like to. It seems like it's still this monumental concept, and I hope it just becomes the norm at some point. But the idea of teaching the whole human being, right? Like, yeah, I have someone who shows up in a lesson with me, and yeah, sure, they've worked on X, fundamental, or Y, etude, or whatever the case may be, whatever solo their jury piece, and they come to me, and it is part of my duty to help guide them to be as successful as they can with that. But there are certain things that may or may not be in and out of the way of that. And if you're struggling as a human being with other aspects of life, it is manifest that in order to have the most amount of efficiency and true productivity, like a little bit in the way that you're saying we need to reframe it, right? Is to put ourselves in a headspace and in an area and in an environment where we feel seen and supported, that this is a process, and we can embrace the process and not have to be frustrated when the journey goes slower than we feel like, or if we're in a direction that we don't feel like we want to go. You mentioned the whole practice room thing. That was a very common thing when we were going through college, right? It's like,
it.
if you don't spend every day practicing, someone else will. I heard that a lot, right? Which is, which can be a good message, but there's a much bigger story that comes to play, right? First of all, what goals are the other people who are practicing, working towards, and are they the same as your goals? Because if so, then there's not really a need to compare yourself. For example, if someone's trying to be a professional symphony orchestra musician, then it would make sense that they are going to spend an inordinate amount of time working towards orchestral excerpts. That shouldn't make you feel guilty about not practicing orchestral excerpt if you're going into music therapy, or if you're going into military band, or if you want to be, and there's so many other aspects to the conversation. And I think we as musicians are really, really good at holding high standards for ourselves and for everyone else. There stands to be some improvement for, in addition to holding those high standards, to allowing ourselves to truly be human and understand that we have bodies that are growing and developing and changing. And as we go through the process of navigating life, it helps to inform the way that we navigate our instruments. And yeah, I don't know. I just think that's a powerful thing. I mean, I know Kayla and I both started this episode by saying we were big fans of you. So I'm glad that we have evidence now on recording as to why we're big fans of you. This is a really important thing, right? And our students now, the ones that are going through college and high school, they went through school in some way, shape, or form in a developmental stage where they had to deal with the effects of COVID-19 and the pandemic, where everything shut down. And we one of the really interesting things as educators, and sometimes a little exhausting, especially if you're an empath, right? You see every single student that comes every single year, you kind of see the part of the developmental aspects of their childhood journey that they missed because everything shut down, and they had to, and there's a lot. I mean, it manifests itself in so many ways. One of the things I think that's really powerful about embracing the mindfulness of becoming a full human being, or teaching a full human being who just happens to hold a trumpet in their hand, right, or whatever instrument it is that no matter what challenges we go through, you have the opportunity to figure out how to fully understand yourself, or to figure out how to fully understand the person that is with you, and to be able to serve them in a unique manner that allows them to be able to achieve their unique dreams. So I just think it's really, really powerful. I'm gonna comment on one more thing about your quote unquote rants. I think rant has a negative connotation. I would
I
listen to
thought
you
she said
rant all
tangent.
day. Oh,
Tangent and
tangent,
rant.
tangent, tangents.
All of the
Ah,
above.
it's a better connotation. So that's good. Yeah, tangent, tangent. But I mean, like, what even is being the best, right? There's
Right.
multiple definitions to it, and I mean, you could talk about, I mean, really, what is the best? Are we talking, I mean, when you think about Reinhold Friedrich or Ryan Anthony, right? Who's better? I don't know. I don't care, right?
Yeah.
When you think about I don't know, uh, Wynton Marsalis or Chris Bodie, I don't. I mean, they're both amazing, right? And we want them both in our field. And you could put any two professionals together and think like, well, it just doesn't matter, right? What matters is that you're the best version of yourself that you can be, and there's a part of human development that is necessary in order to make that happen. And it is not what I sometimes thought when I was in high school, which was like, I practiced for 5 whole hours. How come I don't sound as good as Alan Rizzuti? I must have no value to the trumpet. Ridiculous, absolutely absurd, right? There's so much more to our career than that. I feel like we can kind of talk about this forever, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and to me is I do an exercise with my students about like finding their why, like what is their why? And it's not allowed to, so I start the exercise with asking them like, why do you play music? And a lot of the time it's like, well, my dad played the trumpet, or which my dad played the trumpet, so or I was told that I was good at it, or my high school band director was the only person in high school that I felt safe with. Like all of these things that have to do with kind of like external factors. And at the end of the day, that doesn't keep us going. Like these external factors, like, oh, I got first chair all state, so I figured I should probably go into this. That's not what will keep you going. And usually those students burn out
Yeah,
really quickly. So instead, exploring like, what is it internally that you want to offer the world? What is it? Do you want to build community? Do you want to uh, be able to express this beautiful art? Do you want to uh, be somebody that is like, I'll use the example of one of my students is like, I just want to be a queer role model. And I'm like, heck yes, that is, so like having those whys can make things so much more worth it. And also it lets us keep going on the days where it's like, well, I did not play how I wanted to play today. It's like, you know what? Did I still help build community through that performance of XYZ? Yes, I did. So that's what I'm here for, and that's what matters. Nobody cares that I chipped this note. And exploring that, I think that's really what keeps us going. And we as teachers, as like the I almost said the older people, which I don't like that at all.
no, you've got
Oh,
you've got a minimum of decades left in your career,
yeah.
Brian.
But as as facilitators of trumpet learning, we have a responsibility to teach students about themselves because we're some of the only people that actually like understand exactly what they're going through. And if we don't teach them now, they will get out into the world, into the field, and not know how to say no to things, not know how to prioritize, not know where their own limits are, and either just kind of like fizzle out because they've lost their spark and their fire and the guidance of seeing somebody once a week, or burn out and be continuing to operate at the highest possible capacity and then they can't stay in the field. And so like I'll share that my why is to have musicians making music as long as they possibly want to in their lives. and not having to quit to basically decrease the statistics on how many musicians leave the field because of injury or mental health.
I love that. I think that what we've talked about in this conversation of like being your best self is a really important thing because it's so hard to see other people, especially with social media. You knew I was going to bring that into this because Brianne's a TikTok star. Um,
Social media, what's that?
but like you see everybody else out there putting, they put out their best content, their best performances. We don't see the behind the scenes. And so it's really easy to compare ourselves to them and be like, well, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not there? And when I'm teaching in my lessons and my students are getting frustrated, I'm like, well, are you better than you were last week? Are you better than you were yesterday? It's so important to think about your own progress. And then also, if like you are focusing on a specific exercise, like with some students, we're working on flow, like reading through the music, because like with anxiety, if you think you're about to make a mistake, you'll stop before you even make the mistake. So, if we're focusing on just going through, some students will be like, well, but I missed this note, or I didn't play this right rhythm, or I didn't play this, this properly. And it's like, but you kept going. That was the goal for this whole exercise. Like, you can't expect yourself to do everything all the time, like all at once. You have to give yourself attainable goals, which is something that I need to remind myself of too. Like every time I teach, I'm like, oh, Kayla, you should be doing this too, you silly goose. So I just think it's so important. And I would love to create a community where we can all uplift each other. We can all talk about these things and like support each other. And like, if I'm, harping on myself, Marcus will be like, hey, Kayla, you're doing great. Have you thought about looking at it from this way? Which is literally what happened yesterday. Marcus texted me and gave me this whole list of things. It's like, well, is this the case? No, then it doesn't matter. Is this the case? No, then it doesn't matter, So it's just so important to have that outside perspective. And being music educators, you have that one-on-one time with the student. And circling back to what Brianne said, like it's important to treat students as people, treat everyone as a human being, because we all go through different experiences and different feelings. And when we're in college, when we're first starting out, like we're still like, our brains are still developing. I like feel like when I turned, I know I'm the baby here, but like when I turned 27, I was like, oh, I feel like a different person. Like, how did I survive as myself growing up? Like, that was so chaotic. Like, what was going on? Like, how am I here right now? Because, our brains are constantly changing and we're trying to figure out like where we fit in and how we fit in and how we relate to people. And it's so scary and overwhelming. And it's just so important to be there for each other. And that's my tangent. So back to you, Marcus.
I kind of want to pull up an Uno reverse card. I'm gonna talk anyway. I just wanna use it as an excuse to
I don't have any cards.
just to Uno reverse you back. No, but you have an Uno reverse, so I'll go back. It's okay, Brian. We didn't prepare you for the cards. I literally did we put this on recording? I don't remember. If we're saying it twice, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Literally an hour before we started recording this, because of the last episode we had, I literally went and bought Uno. I bought a deck of Uno cards specifically for this, for where I'm living. So I have multiple decks of Uno cards. They're just not here where I currently live. So I literally went out and bought one specifically for this episode, because like we said last time, it's not a real episode otherwise. Brianne, I wanted to get your take on a few things. Relating to the way that you show up on social media and specifically on TikTok, which I think is really great. There's a lot of focus on, there's a lot of that. If someone's going through and they see you on TikTok, there's going to be a lot of feelings of like, wow, she sees me. I feel understood. Oh, shoot, I do need to go practice. Oh, right. When I practice, I need to be thinking about these things. Oh, well, I've never really understood, and like humans, like we're always, I mean, I've said this a lot of times to a lot of people, I've been on record saying this, right? We're always growing and developing and changing. And it's a mistake to do things the same way today as we did them yesterday, knowing that we are a different human being today than we were yesterday. So I was wondering if I kind of get your take on some of the things. Like, there are certain things we used to do almost religiously, and sometimes maybe we still do religiously in the music world, that maybe we shouldn't do so much of anymore. And I'm just curious, have you seen anything that has shown its way in your teaching or in your experience with colleagues more often than others, where you're like, this definitely needs to not be a thing anymore, and what should we be doing instead?
The number one thing that comes to mind for me is touching our students.
Oh yeah.
Um, which sounds, at least to me, it's kind of like that feels pretty obvious that we shouldn't be doing that. However, classical music has a big, big, big problem. Big, big, big problem. Um, and there is still pedagogy out there that believes that you have to put your hand on somebody's stomach or rib cage in order to know if they're breathing or to help them learn how to take an efficient breath. And I I look at that and I'm kind of like, okay, so I've taught yoga through Zoom, which means I can get somebody to do a headstand without touching them.
Yeah.
I could probably get somebody to take a full breath. Like,
Yeah.
it's much less complicated and it's something that we do all day, right? Like,
Hmm.
I don't understand why there's this. And I do understand that, like, something tactile can shift a learner's experience. However, like, I use one of the examples I use the most is like I have a lot of students who will bring their heads forward when they play, bring their head to their instrument. Very bad for your neck, right? So instead, I will put a book instead of my hand behind their head and say, keep contact with the book. And then they have to play. And even though there's nothing like, I don't believe that there's anything really controversial of taking your hand to the back of somebody's head, it just keeps that boundary. It just keeps that like hard and fast rule because I think that that's really important. And there will be people that are like, but I ask permission. Yeah, there's still a power dynamic
Yeah.
because
We should talk about that too.
yes, absolutely. Oh, I would love to. Yes. There's a power dynamic. And even the students that trust you so much, if you're like, did you practice this when you can clearly tell that they didn't, they're probably going to lie and say they did because there's the power dynamic and they're scared of disappointing you, especially if they like you, like there's that will exist no matter what. And so, because there is this like culture that I would love to dismantle of this like guru relationship with teacher and student, they have this ingrained fear of disappointing us and therefore do not want to say no. So asking for permission doesn't really level the playing field at all. All it does is like maybe you won't get sued. Like, which maybe that's all people do it for. I can't even think about that. But it's yeah, we have a problem. So that's the one thing. That's like the most immediate thing that came to my brain when you said, "Is there something that
Hmm.
you see that shouldn't be common practice?" That's like number one. And I do think that we're at a place where people are addressing these things, people are reporting these things more than they used to. But like until we can go a day, like any amount of time, literally, without seeing some sort of new allegation or somebody being brought to the Title IX office, like then it's too much.
Yeah. 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 And to be just for the sake of clarity, if for anyone who might be thinking like, well, if someone says it's okay, then why wouldn't it be okay? Like, to be super clear about what Brian said, right? Like, one, when you respect someone, you oftentimes want to please them, and if you perceive that they might be displeased with an action, then it influences your decisions, right? And when you look up to someone, you want them to think that you're doing well and that you're doing all the things. And sometimes, especially in studios that maybe aren't quite as focused as Brianne's studio is, right, on teaching the whole human being, they show up, and it's really easy, like we were talking about before, to attach your value to the way that you grow and progress as a musician. And if you feel like you haven't grown and progressed as a musician throughout the week, you might feel as though you are communicating to a professor or a coach or a mentor that you are lacking in value. There's so much of a psychological battle there that just, we just, if we don't need to open it up, then we might as well not. So if someone's saying, for example, oh yeah, I want to teach you what it really means to like support your sound, and the manner for which they want to do that is like, feel my abdominal muscles, now I'll feel yours, right? If a student feels uncomfortable with that, but they look up to you and they want to improve and they want to continue to go through the process of being the best they can be, and being successful in that type of thing, they're going to allow you to go past those boundaries for the sake of the improvement. But we know better, right? We know that there are other ways to do that. And boundaries are really important, and making students feel comfortable is really important. If nothing else, for all of the reasons that we talked about previously, right? When a student feels seen, when they feel valued, and when they feel supported, it creates a conducive environment where they can grow a lot more effectively than previously. So anyway, it's worth mentioning. I know it's a little bit of a contentious topic among people. Usually, anytime we talk about something that needs to change, it's like, well, but what's wrong with this? Even though sometimes we know very well what's wrong with it, it just takes effort to change, and we don't necessarily always want to put effort towards that, but it's necessary.
Yes,
Something that
absolutely.
I'd like to touch on before we continue with Brienne's amazing answers is for both of you. So, Marcus, you gave a great example of, like supporting your sound with like the abdominal muscles. And like I've had teachers in the past who have been like, here, put your hand on my stomach and see how I support, and like I'll do the same thing to you. So I've been in that situation. How would each of you approach that differently, just so that anyone who's listening, whether it's a student or whether it's a teacher, if this comes up in their teaching, because it so often does, they can approach it from this different way, so we can provide people with alternative options to touching.
Yeah, so that specific thing, support, the my go-to tool is have them sit down on a chair with their back away from the back of the chair, and then lift their legs parallel to the ground. And they will have to have some engagement in their core, and then try and play whatever they're playing. That's like gets the exact same effect as what the tactile touch does.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. And the good news is that there's we're not lacking in different approaches, in many approaches that can be done to have the same result, right? And I know that, like, so I mean, that works really well. I've done very similar things as well with my students. Another thing I do as well, a lot of students will because we tell them certain things because we want to help them achieve the result they're looking for, right? So oftentimes a result-based process will help as well. If I go, this is what I see and what I've noticed, and do you notice how the sound does this, right? But notice how when I make this adjustment, then the sound does this. And a lot of times as well, because every human being's body is different, and like our teeth are different, and our heads are different sizes, and all those types of things, right? The result-based thing will help you to go, and go and be like, oh, okay, I understand, like, when I do this, it opens up my sound, for example, or it helps me to resonate more. And this is the process for me to start. And then, when they are in the right direction, they can figure out how to make that happen, without any sort of physical assistance to make that happen, which I've also found to be really effective. It also, I mean, both of those methods that Brianna and I both mentioned, it also, there's a subtle act where we give students more ownership as well over that improvement. And I don't know, this might be just me theorizing, but I think it's probably more rewarding to a student that way.
And it's something they can duplicate. themselves in the practice room, because there's not going to be somebody around always to put their hand on somebody's stomach, in the practice room. Whereas there's probably a chair. Like,
That is very true. Unless
yeah,
you're like I was when I was 16 and kicked the chair over because you were really angry about your practicing.
it
Don't
happens.
don't be don't be teenager me. Don't do that.
We grow. You know
Yes.
what? It's okay. We can grieve the person you once were, because it
Uh-huh.
it created who you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the most beautiful parts about why I love, like you mentioned before, like there is no perfection. It's always a journey, and you can always get better and improve, and so on and so forth. It's wonderful, because there will be things about me 10 years from now that I didn't like about me today, but that's okay because I can change those, and we can grow and develop, and I can always work towards the person I want to be. And that is true for each and every one of us, each and every individual who is listening. And hopefully, what you've gotten from our conversation thus far is to accept you who is listening right now, the fact that we are all human beings and there's more to us than just the musical side of things. And there are things that we can embrace that will allow us to become more wholesome individuals that will then, as an added benefit, help us improve, the thing that we want to probably improve, which is the trumpet playing, the musicianship, in order to get the job that we want, and so on and so forth. But attending to that human being, the body, the spirit, and the mind, that's such an important and, essential aspect of what you do. And so just allow yourself to take care of yourself, right?
I love that. I want to circle back to what we were talking about, power dynamics,
Okay.
which is it's a big topic. It is a uncomfortable topic for a lot of people. Um, and I was hoping maybe Brienne, if you could sort of like already explained it a little bit, but maybe go into more detail, give a few more examples, and maybe provide people with um, options for if they find themselves in that situation, specifically for
Yeah.
students, because I know a lot of people who are the I don't want to say the victim, but like, like the not in the position of power, they feel like they don't have a voice, or they don't have the right to contradict that if they feel uncomfortable. So how can we provide people with, tools so that they can just say no?
No,
I love it.
that's amazing. Um, yeah, and this all actually, like, I'm gonna kind of braid these thoughts together, right? So a little bit of what Marcus was saying about like being a human and be like tending to those parts of ourselves. I think, and Kayla, I know you asked about a student, but as a teacher, one thing that we can do for our students so that they feel safe in that power dynamic is to be a human in front of them. I think that we have this culture of like professors or teachers or whatever not wanting to make a mistake in front of their student. They don't want to sound bad in front of their student. They don't want to look like a human in front of their student. And because that's the experience they probably had with their teacher, where their teacher was just so good at their instrument or whatever. And um, they are afraid to show vulnerability. But like the most trauma informed thing we can do for our students, and like you said, all of our students have gone through COVID, so like we're all traumatized in various layered ways. uh the best thing you can do for being trauma informed is to show vulnerability and get on their level and reduce the power dynamic as much as possible. So when to kind of answer some of what Kayla asked, the power dynamic is really, it's like there's this kind of how Marcus defined it, like this need of the student to want to please their teacher. And they literally have to because we give them grades. Like they, it's, I get it, and then there's also that side of things where um, maybe I don't know what happened to my students before they showed up at college. I have no idea what their lives were like. It's totally possible that their parents never praised them, or they were never doing well enough for their parents, their high school band director, their private trumpet teacher, whatever it is. They maybe they never felt like that. And so then they come in and study with me, and there's already this power dynamic that I don't even know exists, because I'm just the replacement mom. I'm the replacement high school band director. Like, I'm the new person in their life that is supposed to hold them to standards. Um, and I also think a lot of the time I have some students that I have had some students where I wonder if I'm the first like adult to tell them that they can really do this, that like I believe in you. Um, and it's like such important work to be that person. It's also a ton of pressure, because that means every interaction I have with that student could be life changing for them. Like, it could be, not to like over make myself more important than I am, but like they the the relationship between student and teacher is so important. And if they don't feel safe to make mistakes because of whatever it could be previous trauma, it could be things that their teacher is doing. I'm going to take myself out of this now. It could be the way that their teacher is behaving, right? Like, if they're afraid to make mistakes, they're not going to feel safe in that space. And the power dynamic just continues to grow and grow and grow, because probably if the teacher is unaware of this and teaching in ways that I believe to be a little outdated, they're going to go down hard on that student. And then that student is going to continue to build that fear, rather than like leading with compassion, leading with kindness. And the student's like, okay, that was hard, but they haven't disowned me. Like, they haven't kicked me out. They haven't, um, and so I'm kind of like losing my tangent, because there's so much here. Like, there's so much, but teachers need to lead with compassion, right? And provide that, create that space for vulnerability. And then students, if they're putting in their effort to be vulnerable, to make mistakes, and they're getting hit with like, it's not good enough, it could be nobody's fault, but it's not a good match, teacher and student, and that exists for sure. uh, but the student feels afraid to speak up about it. What that student can do is like find somebody that you do trust. You do not need to go directly to your teacher if you don't feel safe with them. That's like number one, because that teacher might get defensive. They are humans. I don't personally believe that that's the correct response. However, we are humans with egos, and when the ego gets bruised, it can be mean sometimes. So go to somebody else that you trust, go to administration, go to somebody in a different studio, and ask like, hey, will you go talk to administration with me? Will you, oh, I see that your studio professor is the chair of this department. Can I like come to your lesson and have this conversation with them? Because I don't necessarily want to put it in writing on email, but I just like don't feel comfortable and I don't know what to do. Those things are going to be so much better, I think, than if you don't feel comfortable addressing it with the professor one-on-one. If there's the situation, which also exists, where like you aren't loving how lessons are going, but you do still want to study with this person and keep that relationship, but the power dynamic is like making you feel weird. I do recommend like being vulnerable and having that conversation with the teacher if you feel safe with them. Te- Good teachers, I almost said teachers, but good teachers want to know what they're doing wrong. They want to know how to better serve you. They want to know how to support you, because if somebody's a good teacher, they're not in it for themselves. Their ego can like take a chill pill, and they're going to be able to hear that and receive it and be willing to adjust.
Absolutely.
And that is like, that also might help a student who's struggling define whether they want to stay with that teacher or not. That reaction could be everything that they need to know about, I'm going to stay and study with this teacher, or I'm going to explore something different.
I think everything that Brianne has said today is like little nuggets, like little nuggets of wisdom and things that'll make the music world a better place. We have been chatting for quite some time now. So do we want to do any closing remarks or any like final questions so that we can all go about our day and hopefully like take care of ourselves, go touch some grass, drink some water, you know?
Love that.
Brianne, is there anything that you want to share with our audience?
I have said so much already.
And it was
Okay.
all wonderful.
It was all wonderful, and I hope we can do it again in the future. Obviously we love having you around, not just here on the podcast, but here in the music world. And I mean, you know that, right? Like the things you do, you have to get invited to, like you didn't, bust down the doors of the national trumpet competition and say, all right, guys, I'm giving a master class, right? You didn't threaten ITG, the International Trumpet Guild, to be like, all right, I'm gonna be here and work with your students. Like people see and recognize that, right? And it's great. I want people to understand, especially people who are listening now, to understand, as a whole human being, you have unique experiences to your life that will give you the opportunity to provide value in a way that nobody else can. And I think, Brianne, you're just a really, really great, strong example of somebody like that. And it's really great. I don't want you to be the next insert other professional musician that we've seen beforehand, right? I want the best Brianne Borden that the world has ever seen, because we need it more now than ever, right? Yeah. Brianne, where's the best place for our listeners to find you on social media?
Okay, well, if you like particularly liked all of the soapboxes that I got on, find me on TikTok. Brianne Borden is my handle there. If you want less soapboxes and more curated pictures, you can find me on Instagram at Brianne Borden. I also have a website, brianneborden.com. And if you're interested in taking yoga classes, Yoga for All Musicians, we have an Instagram, and our website is yogaforallmusicians.com. We are on demand, virtual, and have some live Zoom classes. So if you are interested in taking, not to turn this into a commercial for myself, but if you're interested in and inspired to take better care of your body, we hope that you'll join us. We've got a free class every single week.
That's wonderful. I love that.
Oh, I need to join too.
So to finish off this episode, whenever you're listening to this, go take some time for yourself, drink some water. Like I said, go touch some grass. You just need some sunlight. Go for a walk. Do those little things for you that are going to make you a better musician in the future.
Heck yes.
And this is over. The episode is over. We love you guys so much. We will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.